Welcome back to the deep dive. We're really glad you're here today because we are heading into a situation that I think, honestly, everyone listening can relate to on some visceral level.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those universal experiences.
Right. So I want you to close your eyes for a second, unless you're driving, obviously. Keep them open for that.
You think you?
But take yourself back to high school.
Oh, the nostalgia.
Yeah.
Or, maybe the trauma, depending on how you look at your high school years.
Yeah, usually a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But specifically, I want you to go to the very end of that experience, the finish line.
Yeah.
We are talking about graduation.
Yeah.
And not just the ceremony itself, but the preamble to it, the lineup.
Right, that waiting period.
Exactly. That moment where you are standing in a hallway or a gymnasium. You're wearing that polyester gown that, let's be honest, never quite fits right. You're checking your cap in a reflection, just waiting for your name to be called.
It is such a high-stakes environment. I mean, it's the culmination of, 12 or 13 years of schooling, everything you've done, the exams, the homework, waking up early every single day. It all funnels down into this one highly procedural event.
It really does. It's the victory lap.
Yeah.
So imagine you are standing in that line. You've done all the work. You passed the classes.
Yeah.
You paid the graduation fees. You are ready for your official graduation headshot.
The proof of life for your academic career.
Yes. This is the photo that your mom is going to frame and put on the mantle.
Yeah.
The one that goes in the yearbook. It's supposed to be a purely celebratory moment.
It validates the entire achievement for the family.
Right. And then suddenly, a school official taps you on the shoulder. You are pulled out of line. And you look around and it's not just you, it's the person behind you and the person behind them. We are talking about a mass removal from the graduation lineup.
Which is pretty much the nightmare scenario for any senior.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to unpack an incident exactly like this that happened at the Antigua Girls High School. We are going to look at the sources we have, which include the specific allegations made by a parent, the school's official defense, and the incredibly confusing contradictions regarding how these rules were actually enforced on the ground.
And we really need to start with the numbers here, because the sources state that over 40 students were pulled from this lineup.
Over 40.
Yeah, 40. That number completely changes the complexion of the story. If you tell me one student was pulled out of line for a dress code violation, I usually think, okay, maybe they didn't read the memo, or they wanted to push the boundaries.
Sure, a rebel without a cause type of situation.
Right. But 40, over 40 students, that is a statistically massive portion of a graduating class to suddenly be in violation of a rule on the most important day of the year.
It honestly sounds like a raid.
It does sound like a raid. From an organizational standpoint, it suggests that something fundamental broke down. Either the rules were not communicated clearly at all, or the rules are so wildly out of step with the culture and reality of the student body that mass noncompliance was just inevitable.
You just don't get 40 individual infractions in a single morning unless there is a huge disconnect between the institution and the people it serves.
Exactly.
So the core conflict here, the reason that was actually provided by the school for this mass removal was hair extensions. Specifically, a total ban on them for the official graduation photo.
Which brings us right into this classic clash. It's institutional policy versus student identity and presentation. Graduation is this really weird intersection where the school desperately wants uniformity. They want everyone in the same gown, the same cap, looking like a cohesive, identical unit.
And the student, meanwhile, just wants to look their best for a photo that will last forever.
Right. They want to shine. And for many of these students, looking their best, feeling confident, involved incorporating hair extensions into their style.
And usually in most schools, these things are somehow negotiated on the day, right? A teacher might say, hey, go fix it. Or, we'll let it slide this once. Just get in there and take the picture.
There's usually a middle ground, yeah.
But here, the middle ground didn't just erode. It completely collapsed.
Yeah.
Because we have to talk about the stakes that the sources highlight. I think some listeners might hear this and think, okay, so they missed a photo. It's a bummer, but is it a big deal?
Oh, but the source material makes it painfully clear. It was not just about skipping a picture.
No. The implication handed down to these students was, quote, no photo, no graduation.
Which is a terrifying escalation of discipline.
It really is.
It connects a purely administrative act, taking a yearbook-style picture, directly to the ceremonial academic act of graduating. The school is essentially weaponizing the photograph. They are saying, if you do not look exactly the way we want you to look in this specific square frame, you do not get to walk across the stage and receive the diploma you earned.
And we are definitely going to get to the financial aspect of that later, because, spoiler alert, there is money involved too.
There is always money involved.
Always. But there is a specific twist in this story that I think really highlights the sheer chaos of that morning. We have one student, the daughter of a parent named Vanjie Joseph, who actually tried to comply in the moment.
This is the part of the source that really stuck with me when we were reviewing the material. It changes the whole dynamic.
She complied, she was slagged, and she took the extensions out right there on the spot. And yet she was still denied the photo.
And that is the exact moment where the logic of the school's rule starts to get very fuzzy. Because if the rule is simply no extensions, and the extensions are now physically gone from the student's head, why is the punishment still in effect?
Right. It makes you wonder what was really going on.
That's where we start to see that there might be a lot more going on beneath the surface here than just a strict dress code.
And as we dug into the background provided in the sources, it turns out there is. There is a deep, unresolved history involving this specific family and the school system. A history involving trauma, unresolved claims, and, if you view it from the parents' perspective, potentially retaliation.
It paints a picture of a relationship between the family and the institution that was already severely fractured long before anyone lined up for picture day.
So let's really get into it. Let's go back to the scene at Antigua Girls High School and break down exactly how this unfolded.
Let's do it. Set the scene for us.
Okay, so it's picture day. This is supposed to be the celebratory moment. You have hundreds of students getting ready. It is chaotic. It is loud. People are excited. Vanjie Joseph's daughter arrives. She gets in line. And then the intervention happens.
And again, we really need to pause on the sheer scale of this intervention. Imagine the logistics of pulling over 40 students out of a line.
It's massive.
You have a long line of teenagers. Teachers or administrators are actively walking down that line, inspecting them visually. And one by one, they are culling them. You, step out. You, step out. You're out.
It feels incredibly aggressive. I mean, think about the size of a standard classroom. That is more than a full classroom of kids suddenly standing off to the side in the hallway, probably totally confused, definitely embarrassed.
From an organizational behavior standpoint, this is a full-blown crisis on the ground. When you have 40 people violating a rule simultaneously, you have to ask yourself as an administrator, was the rule actually clear?
Well, the school claims it was.
They say it was, yes. But if 40 people missed the memo or misunderstood it, clearly your communication channel failed. Or perhaps it's the safety in numbers fallacy. The students might have thought, well, everyone else is doing it. My friends are wearing them, so it must be accepted practice regardless of what the handbook says.
Right. If I see the girl in front of me with extensions, I'm going to assume I'm fine.
Exactly. But regardless of why it happened, think about the atmosphere that management style creates in the room. Instead of excitement and pride about graduation, you have just created a holding pen of rejects. You've created a literal coalition of the excluded right there in the gymnasium.
And the consequence wasn't just a warning. It wasn't, hey, run to the bathroom, fix your hair, and jump back in line. The source says they were explicitly told they would not be photographed, and therefore would not be graduating.
Which is a massive sudden escalation. They are linking the photo directly to the diploma.
It feels wildly disproportionate, doesn't it?
Right.
Because you pass your exams, you put in the hours, you do the coursework, you earn the grades, but because of a hairstyle, in one single photo, you don't get to walk.
It sends a very clear signal. It signals that the institution prioritizes uniformity and strict compliance with the dress code almost as highly as the academic achievement itself. They view the graduation ceremony as a privilege, not an earned right. And they are using the threat of revoking that privilege to enforce the dress code in the strictest possible terms.
It's the finality of it that gets me. The phrase, therefore, would not be graduating. It sounds like a steel door slamming shut. It is a total ultimatum.
And for a teenager, and for the parents who are probably waiting to hear how the day went, that creates immediate, genuine panic. You are suddenly looking at the very real possibility that 12 years of hard work won't be recognized publicly because of a hair accessory.
Which brings us to the really specific, granular case of Vanjie Joseph's daughter. Because amidst this group of 40-plus students, her story gives us a detailed look at how this policy was actually executed on an individual level.
Right. We get to see the human cost inside that large statistic.
Exactly. So we know from the source material that Vanjie Joseph, Evangeline Joseph, is the mother who is speaking out publicly about this. She went to the press, and she describes her daughter's hair in very specific detail.
She says the student was wearing a small bun with extensions.
A small bun. I think we need to note that adjective.
The word small is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. The mother is clearly framing this as a very minor, unobtrusive infraction. We aren't talking about something flamboyant or distracting. We aren't talking about neon pink colors or floor-length braids that would disrupt the uniformity of the gowns.
Right, it was just a bun, a very practical, common, classic hairstyle.
Very understated. But the school officials flagged it anyway. They obviously have eagle eyes for this stuff.
They were looking for it. They were screening specifically for the presence of added hair.
They absolutely were.
And here is the key moment. This is what separates this specific anecdote from a simple rule-breaking narrative. Because when she was flagged, the daughter reacted immediately.
This is the pivot point of the whole story.
She didn't argue with the official. She didn't refuse to comply. She didn't throw a tantrum or cause a scene of defiance. The source states clearly that she removed it entirely.
I really want us to dwell on that image for a moment. Just put yourself in her shoes. You are a teenage girl. You are dressed up for one of the biggest days of your life. You have your outfit perfect. You feel good about yourself. And a towering adult tells you your hair is unacceptable. Yeah. And right there, in front of your peers, in front of the 40 other kids in the holding pen, you have to reach up and undo your hair. You have to physically dismantle your appearance in public.
It is humiliating. It really is.
It is a deeply vulnerable act, but it also shows a desperate, genuine desire to comply with the authority figure. She wanted that photo. She wanted to graduate so badly that she was willing to take her hair apart in a crowded room.
So she takes the extensions out. She puts her own natural hair back up. The offending item, the extension, is physically gone from the room.
Right.
So logically speaking, the problem is solved, right?
In any rational corrective system, yes.
Yeah.
If the rule is no extensions and you now have no extensions, you should be ushered back into the photo line. You have corrected the error. The system worked.
That is not what happened.
No, it is not.
The source material reveals that she was still denied the headshot.
And this is the critical moment for our analysis. Why? We have to ask why. If the condition for the ban was removed, why was the ban upheld?
It feels entirely punitive at that point.
Yeah.
Just like the message is, you broke the rule by having the audacity to show up this way, so you're permanently out. Fixing it doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly. It shifts the entire dynamic of the enforcement. It moves from correction to punishment. A corrective approach from a school says, hey, you can't wear that, go fix it, and then we can proceed. That's educational. That allows for growth and compliance.
Right.
But a punitive approach says, you violated the code the second you walk through the door. The consequence is permanent exclusion. It suggests the school was operating on a strict zero-tolerance basis. Once the infraction is merely noted, the opportunity is completely lost.
Which is incredibly harsh, especially when you consider the stakes we talked about earlier. We are talking about missing your high school graduation entirely for a mistake that was physically rectified in a matter of seconds.
It also raises a huge question about the other students. Did any of the other 39 kids try to fix their hair? We don't have that in source, but we know for a fact that this specific student did. She made the effort, and it was deemed insufficient.
And that leads us perfectly into the debate on consistency and fairness. Because Vanjie Joseph isn't just angry about the hair extension rule itself. She is actively pointing out what she sees as a massive double standard regarding makeup.
Ah, yes. The classic what about them defense. It happens in almost every institutional dispute.
Right. Joseph claims that other students were actively permitted to wear makeup for their graduation photos.
And in the hierarchy of school dress codes, especially regarding a natural presentation, usually schools that go out of their way to ban hair extensions also ban makeup. They usually go hand in hand to enforce that uniform, unadorned look policy.
So the mother is standing there, and she sees other students with makeup. We're talking foundation, mascara, maybe lip gloss, getting their photos taken. Flash, flash, smile. Next.
Yeah.
But her daughter, with a small bun, and then eventually just her own natural hair, is barred from the room.
It creates a massive perception of unfairness.
She sees the bun as being equal to, or honestly even less egregious than, wearing a full face of makeup.
If the school's goal is a purely natural appearance, surely cosmetic makeup alters a face just as much as a small hair bun alters a silhouette. Arguably a lot more so.
But here's where we hit what I like to call the reality gap in the sources. Because the school has a direct defense against this claim.
Yes, the source provides the school's official stance on the matter. They state firmly that students were informed of all the rules ahead of time.
Okay, so they are claiming prior warning, a written policy.
But listen to their specific claim about the makeup. The school explicitly claims that both makeup and extensions were not permitted.
Wait, so the school's official line is, no makeup allowed. But the mom is saying, I literally saw people wearing makeup taking photos.
Exactly. That is the fundamental conflict of narrative here. The school is relying on the policy, what was drafted, approved, and written on paper. We told you, no makeup, no extensions. The mother is relying on the practice, what she claims she saw being enforced with her own eyes in that hallway.
That is absolutely maddening for a parent. If you see a rule being bent or ignored, for other kids, people wearing mascara sliding right through to the photographer while your kid is kicked to the curb for a bun, you are going to feel targeted. You are going to feel like the rules are completely elastic for some families and rigidly weaponized against yours.
It's the classic difference between the rule de jure and the rule de facto. If a rule exists on paper but isn't enforced uniformly for everyone in the room, is it actually a rule? Or is it just a tool that authority figures use selectively to police certain students?
And when you have an initial group of 40 students pulled aside, you really have to wonder, were there students with makeup standing in that group of 40? Or were all the makeup wearers allowed to pass through unchecked?
The source doesn't specify the breakdown, but that is clearly the strong implication the mother is making to the press.
Right.
She is highlighting a glaring inconsistency in enforcement. And here's the thing about institutions. When enforcement feels arbitrary, the authority figure completely loses its legitimacy in the eyes of the community. It stops looking like fair discipline and starts looking a lot like discrimination or blatant favoritism.
And speaking of parents losing things, let's pivot and talk about the money. Because as emotional as this isn't just about pride or pictures. It is about the wallet.
It almost always comes back to the financial aspect. Graduation is practically an industry at this point.
It really is. The source explicitly mentions that parents have already begun paying graduation fees. And these packages aren't cheap. You're paying for the caps, the gowns, the ceremony venue costs, maybe printed tickets for family members.
It's a highly significant investment for many families. They budget for this for months.
And the school has issued a very harsh ultimatum alongside the photo ban. If the child is barred from the ceremony because of this photo issue, the money is not returned.
The no refund policy, this adds an entirely new, heavy layer of leverage to the school's position.
It feels exactly like holding the family's money hostage. Comply with our aesthetic demands, or you lose the milestone experience and you lose the cash you already handed over.
It takes a dispute about discipline and immediately turns it into a financial grievance. Now, Vanjie Joseph isn't just fighting for her daughter's ceremonial right to walk across the stage. She is actively fighting to not be cheated out of her own money.
Which raises the emotional temperature of the conflict immediately. As a parent, you might eventually accept the harsh rule, but losing hundreds of dollars because of a rule that you already feel is being applied inconsistently, that is a recipe for an absolute explosion.
And it puts the school administration in a very powerful, but I would argue very precarious position. On paper, they hold all the cards. They control the ceremony, they control the photographer, and they already hold the funds. But they are aggressively backing parents into a corner. And historically, when an institution backs a parent into a corner involving both their child's well-being and their bank account, look out.
So pushback is going to be fierce.
It's extremely fierce.
But according to Vanjie Joseph, this power dynamic, this feeling of being cornered by the school, isn't a new phenomenon for her family. And this is where our deep dive gets into the really heavy underlying context, because she claims this isn't just an isolated incident about a bad hair day.
Not at all. She alleges a long documented history here, a deep and pretty ugly history.
She tells the press that her concerns, quote, run deeper than today's incident. She alleges years of ongoing mistreatment toward her daughter by the school system.
And she traces this alleged mistreatment all the way back to the primary school level, which is a huge detail. This suggests she sees a long continuum of hostility. In her eyes, this graduation lineup wasn't a one-off bureaucratic mistake. It is just the latest highly visible chapter in a long saga.
And she gets very specific in the sources about what that saga entails. She mentions school bus accidents. And not just one accident, 3.
3 separate accidents on a school bus involving her child. That is statistically alarming for any school district.
It is. And she states that these accidents left her daughter with a back injury. That is incredibly serious stuff. We aren't talking about a scraped knee on the playground. A back injury is the kind of trauma that can affect a student's mobility and quality of life forever.
It's life-altering. And the absolute crucial part of her statement is that she says this matter remains unresolved with insurers and the relevant authorities.
So let's connect the dots here for the listener. Why is a mother bringing up unresolved bus accidents during a public dispute about a graduation photo and hair extensions?
It provides the essential context for her outrage. In her mind, the school, or the broader educational system, has already fundamentally failed to protect her daughter physically. They allowed her to be injured, they haven't resolved the insurance claims, they haven't made the family whole, and now, at the very end of her academic career, after surviving all of that, they are actively blocking her graduation over a hair bun.
She sees it as a deliberate pattern.
Exactly. She perceives it as systemic negligence or honestly active hostility. The internal narrative is, you hurt my daughter on your bus, you refused to pay for the medical fallout, and now you won't even let her have her graduation moment.
Is it possible, based on her statement, that she thinks the incredibly strict enforcement on the hair is a form of retaliation?
It is definitely a strong possibility that the source implies by putting these two issues in such close proximity. Now, logically, we cannot know the school's internal motivation. It's highly possible that the specific teacher checking hairstyles in the gymnasium had absolutely no idea about the pending bus accident insurance claims.
All right, bureaucracies are often completely siloed.
Mm-hmm.
The principal's office might not talk to the legal department.
Exactly. But you have to look at it from the mother's perspective. For her, these things are inextricably linked. She sees one singular institution that has consistently made her daughter's life difficult and painful.
It certainly explains why she took the extraordinary step of going to the press. It wasn't just a simple complaint of, hey, my kid got pulled from the line and I'm annoyed. It was a boiling point of, I have had enough of this administration.
It's the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Or perhaps, given the specific nature of the back injury she mentioned, a very literal, very painful reminder of how the system has treated them over the years. It fuels the fire. It takes a standard dress code dispute and elevates it into a moral crusade for justice.
So if we step back and look at the whole messy situation, we have a chaotic lineup of 40-plus confused, upset teenagers. We have a mother who feels legally and personally targeted. We have a teenage daughter who physically tried to fix her infraction but was rejected anyway.
Yeah.
And we have a school administration standing absolutely firm on its written rules, refusing refunds.
It is a textbook breakdown of institutional trust.
When you look at all the elements we've discussed from the sources, what stands out to you as the biggest, most avoidable failure here?
For me, it always comes back to the moment the daughter took out the extensions. That was the crucial off-ramp. That was the exact moment where the conflict could have been successfully de-escalated by an adult. The ultimate goal of the school's rule, which was no extensions in the photo, was met. By refusing to accept that immediate correction, the school actively chose to turn a routine dress code check into a massive standoff.
That is such a compelling point.
Yeah.
It's the total lack of grace, that rigid, uncompromising adherence to the idea of you broke it initially, so you're done forever.
And when you apply that level of rigidity to over 40 students at once, you don't just enforce a rule, you manufacture a crisis. You create a hostile environment where there really didn't need to be one.
I just keep going back to the image Vandy Joseph described, her daughter putting her natural hair up. A young girl standing in a gymnasium, holding the discarded extensions in her hand, presenting herself with her natural hair in a bun, looking at an adult official and just getting a flat no.
It is heartbreaking when you visualize it. Graduation is fundamentally supposed to be a celebration of the student's journey. But in that specific moment, the student was entirely erased in favor of the policy. The written policy became vastly more important than the actual person standing in front of them.
And then the alleged inconsistency with the makeup just adds salt to the wound. Even if the school publicly states that makeup was panned across the board, if the mother and student saw it happening, in these situations, perception is reality.
Absolutely. Consistency is the absolute bedrock of fair discipline in any organization. If you don't have consistency, you don't have authority, you just have tyranny. Or at least that is exactly how it feels to the person on the receiving end. If I see you letting someone else slide on a rule, but you bring the hammer down on me, I am never going to respect your rule again.
So, taking all this in, what does this actually mean for you, the listener? Why should we, regardless of where we live, care about a graduation dispute at a high school in Antigua?
We should care because we all interact with large institutions every single day. We all face bureaucratic rules that sometimes feel arbitrary or poorly communicated, and fundamentally we all hope that if we make an honest mistake, like wearing the wrong hair accessory to an event, we will be treated like human beings and given a fair chance to fix it.
It's really about the unwritten social contract, isn't it? The contract that says, if I comply with your correction, you will accept me back into the fold. And when a school breaks that contract, everything just falls apart.
Precisely. It actively creates a cynical society. If fixing your mistake doesn't actually change the outcome or help you, why should anyone bother fixing it? Why bother trying to comply in good faith at all?
And there was that massive looming question of the financial fallout. If those 40 kids really don't get to graduate, does the school system just quietly keep thousands of dollars in fees? That is a massive public relations and legal nightmare of just waiting to detonate.
It is a ticking time bomb. And legally speaking, I have to imagine parents will not take that lying down. If those 40 families banded together, that is a class action lawsuit waiting to happen, or at the very least, a highly disruptive public petition that the school board will have to answer for.
Well, Vanjie Joseph certainly isn't taking it lying down. She has already publicly invoked the insurers and the relevant authorities in the press. She's laying the groundwork.
She is refusing to be quiet, and by doing so, she is forcing the school administration to publicly explain itself. She's forcing them to go on the record and defend not just the rule, but their method of enforcing it.
The source material ends by noting that they will continue to follow this story. And honestly, I am genuinely invested now. I really want to know how this resolves. Does the school board blink under the pressure? Do the kids eventually get their photos taken?
How does the school dig their heels in even further, continually citing the prior warning defense? It is a massive test of wills. Will they ultimately prioritize the integrity of the dress code policy or the well-being and celebration of the graduating class?
It really is a cliffhanger. You know, we started this deep dive by having you imagine standing in that graduation line, the excitement, the nerves, the anticipation of the future.
And we somehow ended up deep in a story about unresolved insurance claims, multiple bus accidents, and hostage graduation fees.
You just goes to show you, you truly never know what kind of heavy history people are carrying with them when they show up for a supposedly simple event, like a yearbook photo. You look down the line and see a girl in a graduation gown. You don't see the bus accident, the chronic back injury, the years of deep-seated frustration with the administration.
That is incredibly true. We only ever see the snapshot. We rarely see the whole movie playing behind it.
So to recap our deep dive today, we've unpacked the mass removal incident, the highly specific case of Vanjie's daughter attempting to comply, the heated debate over makeup versus hair extensions, the financial threats of the no-refund policy, and the deep traumatic history between the family and the school.
We have definitely covered a lot of complex ground today.
We have. And as we wrap up this conversation, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We talked at length about the daughter actively correcting her mistake. She physically removed the extensions. She swallowed her pride and did the hard thing in front of everyone.
Right. She completely dismantled her chosen appearance to appease the authority.
So here's the question I want you to explore on your own. When a student, or honestly, when anyone in a subordinate position corrects a mistake immediately, when they clearly demonstrate that willingness to comply right in the heat of the moment, does the institution have a moral or ethical duty to accept that correction?
That is the big lingering question. Is the ultimate goal of the institution compliance and education, or is the goal simply punitive authority?
Exactly. Or, looking at it from the stricter side, does the initial breakage of the rule forfeit the moment entirely? Does the mere fact that she chose to show up with the extensions mean she permanently lost her chance, completely, regardless of what she did to fix it next?
It really boils down to a question of institutional mercy versus strict, unyielding justice. And we have to ask ourselves, which one of those actually builds a better, healthier society?
Think about that the next time you are in a position of enforcing a rule or the next time you have a rigid rule enforced on you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been an absolute pleasure analyzing this with you.
See you next time.